We don't get to choose how much time we have, but we do get to choose how we use it. And that choice every day is what separates the people who seem to win from those who always feel like they're running behind. Not because the winners are smarter, not because they have more resources, more energy, or more luck, but because they've learned the difference between being busy and being purposeful. That difference is everything. We live in a world that rewards movement, not meaning. We're trained to think that if we're doing something, anything, we must be progressing. We equate noise with value, speed with success. But here's the truth. Motion without direction is the fastest route to burnout. It's not about doing more, it's about doing what matters. The question isn't, how can I stop wasting time? That's surface level. The real question is deeper. Why am I wasting time in the first place? For most of us, the answer is simple. We haven't defined what winning means. We're chasing someone else's scoreboard, someone else's version of success, someone else's expectations. And when we don't know where we're going, we'll follow anything that looks like progress. The first step toward using our time wisely is understanding what we're really after. What does winning look like for you? I don't mean money or followers or titles. I mean what it feels like to be truly alive, to be aligned, to wake up with a sense of purpose, not panic. Because if we're not clear on the why, then anyhow will lead us in circles. But once you define what winning looks like, once you decide what actually matters, you begin to see your time differently. You stop counting hours and start measuring impact. It's easy to blame distractions, social media, emails, endless notifications. But the biggest threat to our time isn't distraction, it's dilution. It's doing good things that aren't great things. Things that make us feel busy but aren't important. Things that feel urgent but aren't important. We say yes because it looks like opportunity. But every time we say yes to something that doesn't serve our bigger purpose, we say no to something that could. We need to get better at saying no, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment, not because we think we're too good, but because we know what's too important. Winning requires focus, and focus requires sacrifice. That means turning down the good so you have room to say yes to the great. Of course, this is easier said than done, because even when we know what matters, we often wait. We wait to feel ready. We wait for motivation to strike like lightning. We wait for the right time. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Motivation is unreliable. It's a spark, not a system. If you want to stop wasting time, don't rely on how you feel. Rely on what you do consistently. Habits are the infrastructure of achievement. Systems are what carry us on the days our feelings don't show up. You can't win if you're always starting over. The secret isn't to wake up every morning hyped and inspired. The secret is to build routines that reflect your purpose even when the emotions aren't there. And this is where most people fall off. They believe productivity is about doing more. It's not. It's about doing less, but doing it with intention. The most effective people I know aren't the busiest. They're the clearest. They don't try to squeeze 10 priorities into one day. They work from a place of clarity, not chaos. To do that, we have to protect our attention, silence the noise, elevate the signal. That means creating moments of stillness, not scrolling, not checking, just thinking, reflecting, realigning, because clarity isn't found in movement, it's found in space. We don't reflect enough, and when we don't reflect, we can't adjust. We run on autopilot, driven by other people's urgency. But when you take time to pause, you start to see where you're leaking energy. You see where you're spinning your wheels, and suddenly you realize winning isn't about speed, it's about direction. But none of this matters if we don't begin. And this is the final trap, perfection. The myth of the right moment. The idea that one day everything will line up and we'll feel ready, but we never do. We think we need to have it all figured out before we start, but in reality, clarity comes after the action, not before. You don't need to have all the answers to begin. You just need to move. Start small, start messy, start unsure, but start. Because once you begin, the momentum builds, confidence grows, lessons appear, and you realize that the biggest waste of time Isn't failure is hesitation. Every minute spent waiting is a minute you don't get back. So what does this all add up to? First, define your win. Know what matters to you, not to them, not to the algorithm, but to you. Then protect it. Say no to what doesn't align. Build habits that carry your vision, not just your mood. Make space to think. Protect your time like your future depends on it, because it does. And finally, take action. Not when it's perfect, not when it's easy, but now, because time isn't the problem, alignment is. And when you get that right, you don't just stop wasting time. You start winning every day. We're not running out of time, we're just not using it well. Think about that. We blame time for what we haven't done. We say there just aren't enough hours in the day, but the truth is we all get the same 24 hours. What we do with them. The issue isn't the clock. It's our clarity. It's how often we confuse being in motion with making progress. We live in a culture obsessed with more productivity, more goals, more hustle, but more without direction just leads to exhaustion, not excellence. It's like running on a treadmill and calling it a journey. We burn out not because we're weak, but because we're chasing a finish line we never define. And that's where it begins. You can't win if you don't know what you're trying to win. Not everything that looks like success feels like success, and not everything that looks like hard work actually moves you forward. You can spend an entire life climbing a ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. That's the tragedy we risk every time we don't stop to ask ourselves the hard question, why am I doing this? The first step to using your time well is knowing what matters most. And that requires courage. It means admitting that some of the things we've been chasing aren't aligned with who we truly are. It means letting go of the pressure to compete with people who don't share our values. It means stepping off the hamster wheel long enough to ask, what do I want to feel when I win? Fulfilled, free, peaceful, proud? Because that feeling, that's the compass. That's the real scoreboard. And when we define that for ourselves, suddenly everything else becomes clearer. But clarity without commitment is just a wish. Once you know what you're aiming for, the next step is making choices that honor it. And here's the part that most people miss. You can't choose everything. Saying yes to something meaningful means saying no to a dozen things that aren't. And that's hard, it's uncomfortable, we're afraid of missing out, of disappointing people, of burning bridges. So we try to please everyone. We try to do everything, and in the end, we lose ourselves in the process. Time isn't just something you manage, it's something you protect ruthlessly, not with guilt, but with intention. Because your energy is finite, your focus is fragile, and your attention is currency. Every time you spend it on something that doesn't align with your deeper purpose, you're going into emotional debt. And over time, that debt adds up. It shows up as fatigue, frustration, and that nagging sense that you're working hard but not getting anywhere. That's when you need to pause and reflect. Is what I'm doing actually helping me win the way I define winning, or am I just staying busy to avoid the discomfort of doing what really matters? We procrastinate not because we're lazy, but because we're scared. Scared to fail, scared to succeed, scared to face the responsibility that comes with truly showing up for ourselves. So instead we scroll, we overthink, we fill the space with things that feel urgent but aren't important, and we convince ourselves that we'll start later when we're ready. But here's the thing, you'll never feel fully ready. Growth doesn't come from waiting for the perfect moment. It comes from starting before you feel qualified. Before you feel certain, before everything makes sense. Action creates clarity. And clarity creates momentum. You want to stop wasting time? Don't wait for the mood to strike. Build systems that work even when motivation disappears. Because it will. Motivation is fleeting. Systems are faithful. Motivation shows up when it feels like it. Discipline shows up even when you don't want to. And discipline is what builds momentum. It's what turns good intentions into consistent action. And the good news? Discipline isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. It starts with one small decision to show up today. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. One email written, one page read, one workout done. And over time, these choices compound, and slowly, silently, they build a life of meaning. The people who win don't always have the best ideas, but they act on the ones they have. They don't waste hours waiting to be inspired. They build their environment to support their goals. They create space to think, to breathe, to be still, because they know clarity doesn't come in the noise, it comes in the quiet. And when you create that space, when you step back from the constant hum of urgency, you begin to notice something powerful. Most of what we call important is just loud. It's not meaningful, it's just noisy. And the more you remove that noise, the more clearly you hear your own voice, your real priorities, your true purpose. And from that place, you start to act with precision. You stop chasing every opportunity and start choosing the right ones. You stop measuring your day by how much you did and start measuring it by how aligned your actions were. You stop letting the world dictate your schedule and start designing a life that reflects your values. Winning isn't something you stumble into, it's something you design for. It's not about being perfect, it's about being aligned. And alignment requires honesty. Are the things you do each day reflecting the person you want to become? If not, something has to change, because time will keep moving with or without you. So let's stop pretending the problem is time. Let's stop saying I'm too busy when we really mean I'm unclear. Let's stop chasing everything and commit to something. Let's protect our focus, build our systems, trust the process. And most of all, let's begin now, not later. Because every second you hesitate is a second you never get back. And every second used in alignment is a step closer to winning. The choice is yours. It always has been. There comes a point in everyone's life when you stop and ask, where did the time go? It's not a dramatic moment. It doesn't come with fireworks or an announcement. It usually happens in the quiet, maybe on a drive or late at night when the world is still. And it hits you. You've been moving, working, doing, but not necessarily living with direction. It's in that moment that something shifts. Not because you're out of time, but because you're finally aware of how precious it is. The most dangerous way to waste time is to think you're not. We rarely notice it happening. It slips through the cracks of our distractions, our busy work, our endless lists of obligations. And that's the real danger. Wasted time doesn't always feel wasted until it's too late. That's why the question we need to be asking isn't how do I get more done? The better question is, am I doing the right things with the time I have? Because the truth is, your life is being built right now. Not next year, not when the timing is better, not when you feel more confident. Every decision you make is casting a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. Every moment is a brick in the foundation of your legacy. And if we're not intentional, we end up building something that doesn't reflect who we are or who we want to be. Time doesn't reward the busy, it rewards the deliberate. Most people are busy reacting to life instead of creating it. They wake up and let the day pull them in 100 directions. Their calendar owns them. Their phone dictates their mood. And somewhere in the blur of responsibilities, they lose touch with what they actually care about. Not because their dreams have been drowned out by noise. The most powerful people I know aren't running faster. They're walking in the right direction. They've learned that clarity beats hustle. That reflection is more valuable than reaction. That meaning comes not from doing everything, but from doing the right things with full attention. But that clarity doesn't come naturally. It has to be created. You have to step back and take full ownership of your time, your choices, and your energy. You have to ask yourself, what am I saying yes to? And in saying yes to those things, what am I unconsciously saying no to? Because you're always trading time for something. The question is, are you trading it for something that matters? We often think time gets stolen from us, but most of the time we give it away. We give it to distractions, to fear, to habits that don't serve us. We give it to trying to impress people we don't even respect, to chasing standards we never chose, to solving problems that don't even belong to us. And the result? We wake up exhausted and wonder why we still feel behind. You don't need more hours, you need more alignment. When you're aligned with your values, decisions become clearer, boundaries become easier. You stop apologizing for protecting your peace. You stop explaining why you don't want to do what everyone else is doing. Because when you know what you're building, it becomes much easier to walk away from things that don't support it. That's where winning begins. Not in strategy, but in identity. Not in urgency, but in intention. If you want to stop wasting time, the answer isn't in a new planner or another app. It's in choosing a life you won't feel the need to escape from. It's in doing the hard, often invisible work of choosing what to care about and being brave enough to act on it every single day. There's a reason people get to the end of a day and feel like they did so much and yet nothing that mattered. It's because they spent their time reacting instead of deciding. Winning doesn't happen by default. It happens by design. It's the result of hundreds of quiet, unseen choices made when no one is watching. The choice to get up early and reflect. The choice to walk away from distractions. The choice to prioritize rest over performance. The choice to say no when it would have been easier to say yes. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being awake, present, responsible. Because the second you take ownership of your time is the moment you take ownership of your life. There's a story I heard once about a man who carried a stone in his pocket as a reminder. Today is a gift, use it well. At the end of the day, if he couldn't remember what he used the day for, if it had disappeared in meaningless tasks, he would sit with that discomfort. He didn't need a crisis to start living intentionally. He just chose to remember. That stone wasn't magic, it was just a tool for awareness. And awareness is the beginning of change. You don't need a stone, but you do need to remember, this day will never come back. And that's not meant to scare you, it's meant to empower you. Because once you realize how precious time is, you begin to respect it more. You protect your focus. You become more intentional with your conversations, your relationships, your goals. You begin to think legacy, not in terms of someday, but in terms of right now. You stop waiting to live the life you want and start building it moment by moment. It's not about cramming more into your day. It's about making your day more meaningful. You don't need to do everything. You just need to do what matters with everything you've got. That's how you stop wasting time. That's how you start winning. Every day you wake up, you're writing a story. The question is, will it be a story worth telling? Most people think wasting time means doing nothing, but that's not true. The most dangerous form of wasted time is doing the wrong thing really well. It's working hard on things that don't matter. It's pouring your energy into goals you didn't choose. It's achieving but not aligning. Winning isn't about doing more, it's about doing right. So many of us are chasing the illusion of progress. We fill our days with tasks, appointments, meetings, messages. We check things off a list just to feel a sense of movement. But not all movement is forward. And if we never stop to ask, am I headed in the right direction? We might find ourselves working overtime to arrive at a destination we never wanted. But that's why it's not enough to be busy. Anyone can be busy. The world rewards busy. We wear it like a badge. We say, I'm slammed, I'm buried, I'm just trying to catch up. As if that's the proof we're doing something meaningful. But there's no honor in exhaustion. There's no trophy for being the most overwhelmed person in the room. And there's no legacy in motion without meaning. Time is a mirror. It reflects what you value most. If you want to know what matters to someone, don't ask them, watch how they spend their time. Because time doesn't lie. You can talk all day about what you want, but your calendar and your actions will always tell the truth. And that truth isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it reveals that we're living in reaction instead of intention. Sometimes it shows us we're giving our best energy to the least important things. And yet the beauty of time is that it's renewable only if we become conscious of how we use it. You can't recover a wasted day, but you can redeem the next one. You can choose to show up differently. You can pivot. And that decision doesn't require a life overhaul. It starts with one choice to stop living by default and start living by design. That means making your time serve you, not the other way around. It means stepping back and asking, what is this season of my life really about? What do I want to be known for? Not eventually, but now, because what we do daily becomes what we're known for consistently. You don't build a legacy in the future, you build it in your habits. But here's the catch. Once you commit to using your time well, you will face resistance, not just from the world, but from within. Your own habits, your own comfort zones, your own insecurities will push back. It's easy to keep doing what's familiar, even if it's unfulfilling. It's easy to keep saying yes to what others expect, even if it costs you your joy. That's why using your time wisely is an act of courage. It requires you to disappoint the right people. It requires you to stop proving and start becoming. And it often means walking away from things that once felt important so you can make space for what really is. That kind of decision isn't always celebrated, but it's what separates the intentional from the impulsive, the fulfilled from the frantic. When you start using your time for the things that truly matter, something remarkable happens. Your pace slows, but your impact grows. You stop measuring your worth by how much you can cram into a day. You start paying attention to how deeply you can live inside each moment. Your relationships deepen, your focus sharpens, your clarity increases, and the noise that used to dominate your day starts to fade into the background. That's because intentional living is quieter than chaotic living. It's less dramatic, less flashy, but it's also richer, more grounded, more free. And freedom is the real win. Not just freedom from responsibilities, but freedom to live on purpose. Freedom to spend your time in ways that reflect your values, not your stress levels. Freedom to create, to rest, to be fully present. And yet this freedom isn't something someone gives you, it's something you create. Through boundaries, through awareness, through the daily decision to act, not react, to reflect, not just respond, to begin before you feel ready, and to keep going even when you don't feel inspired. Because winning with your time is not about intensity, it's about consistency. It's not about doing extraordinary things every once in a while, it's about doing ordinary things with extraordinary intention. It's about getting honest about where your time is going and choosing to redirect it toward where you want to be. You don't need to quit everything. You don't need to burn it all down, but you do need to take inventory. Look at what's taking your time and ask yourself, is this getting me closer to the life I want, or is it just keeping me distracted from the life I'm avoiding? That kind of honesty is hard, but it's where change begins. Because time doesn't ask for permission. It moves with or without you. And every day you spend disconnected from your purpose is a day you'll never get back. But every day you live with intention is an investment not just in productivity, but in peace. Not just in output, but in impact. So what if you started living like your time mattered? What if you treated your schedule like a sacred space instead of a battlefield? What if you stopped managing time and started owning it? What if you stopped trying to be efficient and started trying to be present? Because presence is where life actually happens. Presence is where joy lives. Presence is where relationships grow. And presence is the birthplace of all meaningful work. You don't need more time. You just need to make better agreements with the time you have. That is how you stop wasting it. That is how you start winning. And that is a choice only you can make every day. There's a question we don't ask often enough. What does winning really look like for me? Not what others told you winning should be, not what your industry celebrates, not what your social feed shows you every day, for you. What does it mean to live a life you are proud of, to go to bed at night with a sense of peace, not just progress? Most people can't answer that, not because they've been too busy chasing someone else's definition of success. We waste the most time when we forget what matters most. And sometimes wasting time doesn't look like laziness. It looks like endless effort in the wrong direction. It looks like being constantly occupied but emotionally disconnected. It looks like achieving more and feeling less. We say we're building something, but if we're honest, we don't really know what we're building or why it matters. That's because the way we use our time is often reactive, not reflective. We respond to whatever's loudest, the most urgent email, the most recent notification, the latest demand from someone else. But urgency doesn't equal importance. And when we confuse the two, we end up spending years moving quickly towards something that doesn't truly fulfill us. The people who use time well don't always move the fastest, but they move with purpose. They say no more than they say yes. They pause when others rush. They create room to think, not just react. And in doing so, they make better decisions, not just more decisions. They don't see time as something to fill. Because the goal isn't to do everything, it's to do the right things. With energy, with presence, with conviction. But doing the right things often means going against the current. It means saying no to things that would make you look good but leave you feeling empty. It means resisting the urge to keep up just for the sake of keeping up. It means slowing down in a world obsessed with speed. And that's not easy. Because when you slow down, you feel everything more. The doubt, the fear, the discomfort of being out of step with the crowd. But that's also where clarity lives. In stillness, you start to notice what actually matters to you. You start to see where your time is leaking, where you're giving too much of yourself to things that don't return anything meaningful. And from that awareness, you can begin to reclaim your time, not as a resource, but as a responsibility. You are not responsible for doing more. You are responsible for doing what matters, and what matters starts with who you are, because time used well always flows from identity. When you know who you are, you begin to know what belongs in your life. You become less impressed by what the world rewards and more focused on what your soul respects. You start choosing integrity over image, depth over performance, meaning over metrics. And once you start making those kinds of decisions, something powerful happens. You begin to feel more connected, not just to your work, but to your life. You stop living on autopilot. You start noticing the moments that used to fly past you. You start showing up fully, and people feel it. Your relationships shift. Your leadership deepens. Your creativity expands. Not because you're working harder, but because you're finally working from a place of truth. That's how you stop wasting time. You stop letting your schedule be a reflection of your obligations and start letting it reflect your convictions. You stop asking, what do I have to do today? And start asking, what's worth my energy today? You stop living from pressure and start living from purpose. And no, that doesn't mean every day will be perfect. Some days will feel messy. Some days will still overwhelm you. That's life. But the difference is now you're rooted. You're anchored in something deeper than productivity. You're anchored in values, and values are what guide you when things get chaotic. Because life will always throw distractions your way. Life will always ask you to hustle harder, to do more, to move faster, but winning isn't about speed, it's about direction. And you can't choose the right direction if you're too distracted to ask where you're going. So ask. Often. Pause, regularly, reflect deeply. This isn't a one-time fix, it's a rhythm, a practice, a way of living that honors time as the limited, beautiful gift that it is. Because time, when used intentionally, compounds. A few minutes of clarity today leads to better decisions tomorrow. A few moments of reflection today prevents weeks of regret later. A single hour spent deeply aligned with your purpose can do more than days of scattered effort. So here's the real challenge. Don't just be busy, be brave. Brave enough to stop, brave enough to ask hard questions, brave enough to say no, brave enough to define winning for yourself and go after it fully, even if no one else understands. Because in the end, the greatest waste of time is not the hours we spent scrolling or procrastinating. It's the days, the months, the years we spent becoming someone we were never meant to be. But the good news? It's never too late to begin again. Every morning is a reset. Every decision is a vote for who you want to become. And every moment is a chance to reclaim the life you actually want to live. So don't just count your time. Make your time count. Because that's how you stop wasting it. And that's how you start winning.